In the 40s, briefly, they made the Moxie Man look more like Frank Sinatra. I got one more slide on the Moxie Man. There are those in the New England Moxie Congress who think that the Moxie Man was the model for the Uncle Sam poster from the First World War. According to the artist of Uncle Sam, he based it off a UK poster that was similar to it from one of the lords in the UK. But again, there are those who think it was the Moxie Man. I'll let you decide whether it's myth or mystique. Finally, the last example I'll give for you is the horsemobile. The one on the left is the last original horsemobile on a LaSalle chassis. It used to be displayed at Clark's Trading Post in New Hampshire. The owner passed away. It was on loan to Clark's Trading Post. The owner passed away last year. His entire estate went up for auction. It sold for $65,000, and we don't know where it went. Ooh. Which is sad because now you won't be able to see it at the parades. It was, Frank Archie created this late in 1917. Moxie had embraced the automobile around 1900. There are many towns and cities here in the Northeast where the very first automobile people saw was a Moxie car or truck. Isn't that interesting? The one on the right here is a reproduction. Will Mackey was well known. He produced 5 or 6 of these and sold them off. And then he kept one for himself, and he passed away. And his family keeps promising to bring this back up, and they haven't yet, which is too bad. So if you actually get a chance to see one of these, snap a photo. Now then, Moxie was number 1 in 1920. Outselling Coke, outselling Pepsi. Matter of fact, Pepsi went bankrupt, belly up in 1923. So, by 1930, you had Moxie as number 1, Coke as number 2. But this is where Moxie started to slip and fall. Frank Archer passed away. And there was no one to take his place in his brilliance on market, unfortunately. But, they tried. And of course, with the Great Depression, money was tight. But it turns out Moxie was one of the first victims of the Cola Wars. Remember, Pepsi went under in 1923, so why do we still have Pepsi today? The owner of a soda fountain candy store chain in New York State had a fight with Coke. He threw Coke out of his stores, bought out what was left of Pepsi, and put Pepsi in his fountains. Not stopping there, he was so upset with Coca-Cola that he started bottling Pepsi in 12-ounce bottles versus Moxie's 7-ounce and Coke's 6-ounce. And he was selling it for the same nickel. Damn. Great Depression. People are poor. They're going to go for the bargain. Matter of fact, some of these people would buy a 12-ounce bottle of Pepsi, bring it into their kitchen, pour it into 2 Coke bottles, and their company would be polite enough not to point out that this doesn't taste like Coke. Problem 2 that hurt Moxie is this right here. That's why I brought this down. This is the family-size Moxie bottle. You fill it to the neck, you got 28 ounces. Prohibition. Number 1 soft drink in the country. Plentiful bottles. What do you call a 750 milliliter bottle of booze?
Nice.
Fifth. But what is a fifth? A fifth of what?
A gallon? No.
A fifth of a gallon, which is just over 26 ounces. So if you fill a Moxie bottle to the top of the letters, you have a fifth of bathtub gin. So their bottles started disappearing into the bootleg market. And of course, when the feds and the sheriff were to catch up with those bootleggers, they would destroy the product by smashing the bottles. So Moxie's costs were going up because they had to replace all these stolen bottles. Do I have that on here? Oh, see, I forgot to hit this real quick. And then Pepsi, sorry, I'm losing track. Oh, back up. Okay, there's one more thing before I go to that next slide. And then World War II hit. In World War II, Coke got real smart. We'll one-up Moxie. We'll send our product to the front lines to the soldiers. And that's what they did. And the problem with that was the soldiers then got hooked on the taste of Coke. Moxie was a fuddy-duddy drink for your parents, not for you. Coke quickly took off and took first place. Moxie, in desperation, made a very stupid mistake. In 1948, they changed the formula, and it flopped.
New Coke.
Yeah, you'd think New Coke would have learned from Moxie.
Moxie,
Doomed. And so Moxie lost more market share. They quickly backpedaled, brought back the original formula. Too late. By the early 50s, Moxie had become regional only, New England, New York, Pennsylvania, despite trying to get Ted Williams on there to promote the product for them, who, was the famous slugger with the Boston Red Sox. They also tried to produce root beer. The root beer flopped. And even with Ted Williams' help, Moxie struggled. Then came along Mad Magazine.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting? Mad Magazine, of course, if you've ever looked at it, does spoofs of everything. The problem with that is it's hard to sell advertising space because you'd have to mark everything. This is a joke or this is for real. So what they tried to do is subtle advertising. They approached Moxie as a test market. And they asked Moxie, can we put you in the pages of our magazine to see what happens? Moxie sales jumped up about 10% as people would see this and go to buy Moxie. But a lot of people didn't know what Moxie was. And so they started writing to the magazine saying, what is this all about with this Moxie stuff? What is this? And so the magazine wrote back in the magazine, actually we've been plastering Moxie all over the magazine because we feel it ought to be restored to the popularity and place of prominence it once enjoyed upon the American scene. Yes, sir, let's bring Moxie back. Going back to that previous slide, you have the mascot of the magazine, who is, and I'm blanking here, I've lost my point.
Alfred E. Newman. Yeah.
Alfred E. Newman, and his girlfriend. Does anyone know the girlfriend's name? Moxie.
Oh.
They named her after the soda.
I never even knew there was a girl.
Yeah,
I knew Alfred, but I didn't know.
She appears like 3 or 4 times in
That's
the
probably
50s
why.
and 60s,
and
then more recently a few times. In the 60s, new marketing staff came on board, and they ignored the warnings of employees who saw the last fiasco. Guess what they did?
No. New Moxie.
New Moxie 2.
No, they did not.
They did. New Moxie again.
We're vengeance.
Wait, hold on a second. So Coke had new Coke in what, the 70s or 80s?
In 84.
80s,
Two
yeah.
examples.
85.
They had 2 examples not to follow this. And of course they lost more market share and were barely afloat. In 1968, Moxie was bought out by Monarch Beverages of Atlanta, Georgia.
Coca-Cola.
No, it's not Coca-Cola. That's what it made them, but because it was in Atlanta, Georgia, people thought it was Coca-Cola that bought them. And that was the case through the 80s. Monarch is a collector of regional soft drink brands to try and keep them afloat. The only positive thing they did for Moxie was that they restored the last original Horsemobile into working condition. Now we move to the early 80s. And a gentleman by the name of Frank Potter, and you keep track of your Franks, had been working for about 10 years to write a history of the Moxie Horsemobile because he wrote histories of various automobiles. Instead, he wound up writing a history of all of Moxie because he figured out you can't write about the Horsemobile without writing about the history of Moxie itself. And he released his book in 1981 called the Moxie Mystique. Frank Anicetti, seen here in center, owned and operated Quebec flavored fruits in Lisbon Falls. He was a big Moxie fan. Half his store was dedicated to Moxie. And he also sold Moxie ice cream. He reached out to Frank Potter and said, "Hey, can you come to my store and do a book signing?" And Frank Potter said, "Sure." And so Frank Anicetti sent out 200 postcards, expecting maybe 50 people to show up. More than 200 fans showed up in 1982 and the Moxie Festival was born. These days, they see closer to 50,000 people. Frank Anicetti retired in 2016, closed down his store, sold off everything, passed away the following year. Cousins of his opened up a restaurant and named it for him. You go to downtown Lisbon Falls, you can go have a meal with Moxie at Frank's restaurant.
Aww.
In 1991, a group of Moxie enthusiasts, after the Moxie Festival, gathered at the Kennebunkport Trolley Museum, and they founded the Moxie fan club known as New England Moxie Congress. I'm a life member. And what they do is they work to preserve Moxie. They give donations of memorabilia and cash to the Matthews Museum to keep the museum going. And a lot of times when one of the members passes, they donate their collection to the museum. If we have a better copy of the item in the museum, we sell the extra. Here's more fun. Oh, did I just lose it? I did not push that
You might
button
have-
and it turned off.
Put it on it. Let it rest for there. It is.
Yep,
Yeah, now
there we
try
go.
it. Okay, good.
That's interesting.
All right.
Now then, moving forward. 2000s to present. In 2007, cornucopia beverages. It must be a dead battery. Okay, I'll just call out loud. Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
In 2007, Cornucopia Beverages, a subsidiary of Coca-Cola of Northern New England, which is also a subsidiary of Kirin Beverages of Japan, convinced Monarch to sell them Moxie. And they did. And Moxie was brought back to New England, based in Bedford, New Hampshire. Cornucopia did the best they could to promote the product despite not having a huge budget. And then they also tried to branch out into Moxie energy drinks and seltzer, neither of which took off, so they were discontinued after a year or two. Sadly, they had some financial issues and were bought out by Coca-Cola in 2018 and merged with other bottles in the Northeast to become Coca-Cola Northeast. In 2019, they had bottling issues. I ended up with some Moxie that tasted like cinnamon, as an example. What it was is they were producing some cinnamon Coke or cinnamon Diet Coke and weren't properly rinsing out the vats before going to the next product. Then, during COVID, there was a shortage of the Moxie syrup. And Coca-Cola made a mistake. They dropped gentian root from the ingredients because to make it line up with their other products. If there's less than 2% of something in their product, they don't normally list it. And the the Moxie fans suddenly said, look at this, Coke changed the formula. It doesn't taste the same anymore. I really think it's weaker now, but they put gentian root back on the ingredient list. There's not a lot of camaraderie, not a lot of trust between the Moxie fans and Coke. So yes, now you can say Coke owns Moxie. All we can say is, in the future, only time will tell what will happen. That's the history portion of my presentation. I got a couple of other items to throw out here just for the fun of it. Oh, I missed one here. Where can you get Moxie now? There are 3 bottlers left. Coca-Cola of Northeast, based in Bedford, New Hampshire. That's where this stuff came from. They use high fructose corn syrup, like all their other products. And they also produce a diet in cans. Catawissa Beverages in Pennsylvania, they produce it with cane sugar in glass bottles. Orchard Beverages in Mukilteo, let me see, I wrote down the pronunciation. Mukilteo,
Might be another. Yeah.
Washington State.
There's a word, Mike.
Thank you. test, 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 test. No.
Nah.
Sorry, I'll just shout.
Right.
I'm almost done anyway. Orca Beverages produces all those old regional brands. They've reached out to the various owners. They supply Cracker Barrel.
Oh.
So anywhere in the country there's a Cracker Barrel, you can get Moxie.
Oh.
If it's not in stock, you ask for it, they can get it for you. But you're going to pay dearly for it because it's got to be shipped from Washington State. So expect to pay $3 to $4 a bottle.
20 ounce bottle?
12-ounce bottle.
Oh, 12 ounce. Ooh, that's
12-ounce
even worse.
bottle.
Yeah.
Now then, people have asked, why is it orange? The product itself is brown. Dark brown to black. But why do they use orange for the label? There are three theories. It wasn't always orange, as you can see. It started out as kind of an off yellow because it was originally medicine. So they used the same color label as prescription paper. Over time, they moved it to orange to make it more eye-catching, according to one theory. But, as you can see, it wasn't always orange. Matter of fact, as you can see here, they played upon the Mad magazine with a campaign that said "Mad about Moxie." Theory 2 about why it's orange. Remember his Civil War record? Orange. These records were done up by private companies after the war for the veterans. The veterans would give them their records and they would do these up. So maybe they used orange to promote the fact that he was a Civil War veteran. Finally, theory number 3. Ever heard of Angostura bitters?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what the flavor of Angostura bitters comes from? Gentian root.
Oh.
Just like the main flavor ingredient in Moxie. And if you ever spill some, it's orange. But we don't know why it's orange. But those are your 3 theories. Any Star Trek fans? Moxie's in Star Trek. Unfortunately, there are Star Trek fans who don't think the books are canon, but I think they are because that way we have Moxie in the Star Trek universe. So find yourself the book Ishmael and you can see that there's Moxie on the Enterprise.
If you're smarter than Montgomery Scott, you could probably turn it into fuel.
Probably. How about Moxie in cartoons?
Oh.
The Simpsons. Huh? This episode won an Emmy for tackling homosexuality. Actually, I think it won an Emmy because it presented Moxie.
Well, Conan O'Brien was from this area, and he wrote for The Simpsons,
Yeah.
right?
Possibly.
No, he did.
Yep.
He produced.
Animaniacs. In the episode Pocahontas, which picked fun at Disney, and in typical Animaniacs fashion, they switched from what they were supposed to be doing to something else for a break. So they went to a soda fountain, and at the top, there's a Moxie sign. Back when this was on, Usenet was still big, and they had a group for Animaniacs where they kept track of all the cultural references. And the writers kept track of that to try and trick them. Moxie never made the reference. So I'm sure the writers were like, yes! How about Bugs Bunny?
Oh.
And Ballot Box Bunny, where he's running against Yosemite Sam to become mayor, about halfway through the episode, he's filling up a bathtub with Moxie for a picnic to try and convince people to vote for him. And I got one more thing to throw in here. Furry fandom. In the 50s, a bottler in upstate New York tried to get a different design for the Moxie bottle with the slogan, "Be Foxy, drink Moxie." It didn't work out, unfortunately. And this is now one of the highly sought after bottles for collectors. There was one collector 2 years ago who put out a $5,000 award to get one. He passed away 2 weeks later. But because of that now, this bottle is now considered worth $5,000. We have one at the museum under the lock and key that you can come see.
That's awesome.
And that's my presentation.
All right, thank you.
And as promised, roughly half an hour. Now then, if you wish to sample Moxie, you can come sample Moxie. If you're a Moxie fan, you can follow me up to my room afterwards. I'll gladly hand you a can because I can't hand the cans out down here.
Oh yeah.
These were bought from the hotel. The ones upstairs were not. So I guess I could pour this out or we can just gather up. Thank you. Are there any questions that I missed?
I said one group does it with cane sugar.
Yeah, Catawissa bottling
What's the
and
alternative?
high fructose corn syrup, which is what I've got here.
How do you get the cane sugar type?
Glass bottles. You can go to
Can you buy it?
Cracker Barrel stores. Here in Maine, if you want to make a trip up to Wisconsin, you can go to Sweets and More. They also get it from Washington State.
And do you have any opinion on the two?
I drink diet. And if I have to drink non-diet, I go for the cane sugar. I hate high fructose corn syrup. I saw you raise your
Yeah,
hand.
I mentioned in Stephen King's 11/22/63, which is a time travel story. It talks about how there was a store in Lisbon Falls that it kept alive by offering Moxie and it had a bit of a museum. Is that store still there? Is it Kennebec Fruit Company or it has a different name? Is it still around?
They closed.
Oh, they closed?
2016.
Oh,
The
okay.
owner died in 2017.
Because I actually went into that little town. I looked around. It's like, there's where the diner was supposed to be, and there's the store. So, okay. And also, are there any restaurants or something that offer Moxie on tap? You know what I mean? Like a fountain? Oh, strictly in bottles.
Strictly in bottles and
Or in cans, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks.